pleasure is Dr. Ashlyn Macklin-Doherty, who's going to finish our meeting.
Thank you very much. I always feel somewhat underqualified when I'm in the presence of such eminent speakers, but I'm here because I love the NHS and I love my job and I love patients and I wouldn't want to do anything else. And most of all, I love my job because of the NHS. The NHS allows me as a clinician to have the freedom to look after patients according to what they clinically need, not how much their life is worth according to an insurance company. That is an incredible, quite a unique freedom in the UK, and every doctor feels that privilege in the NHS. But what's happening, and what has been happening in the last 20 to 25 years, has been a slow erosion of the underlying principles of the NHS, of the comprehensive delivery of care, of the universality of care, and of it being free at the point of use. And as many of the speakers here have highlighted, this is entirely ideological. Not only is it not evidence-based, it actually goes against all of the evidence. The system that we have, a general taxation-funded NHS, is the most efficient and the most effective way to deliver for the needs of the entire population. So what the current government and previous governments have done are moving us away against what is efficient and what is effective. So it is entirely ideologically driven. And what I'd like to share with you is the human cost of that and what I see on the front line. And I think a lot of the things that have been described, particularly by Gerge, about what is happening to the NHS can be divided into two main processes. Suffocation of funds, but also the breakup and marketisation, the privatisation of the NHS. And sometimes this is billed as secondary, but is absolutely critical to undermining the principles of the NHS. So the suffocation of funds, I think Gerge has quite brilliantly highlighted what the human costs are. But when you have some of the lowest numbers of beds in the entirety of Western Europe for the population, yet we're the fifth richest economy in the world, what it means is I have to take the calls from patients with cancer who have had treatments, who have infections, who can't breathe, who are in pain, and I'm the one that has to say, I'm sorry, we can't admit you here. I'm the one that has to listen to the pain, to the distress, to the fear, as they are redirected from pillar to post. When I come into work, and there should be 3 or 4 doctors looking after the patients in the wards, and there's only 1 or 2 of us, the remaining doctors have to take on the workload of the others, and we're told it is our duty to provide patient care. Of course it is. But you can only do so much. When you take on double or triple the number of patients in the same amount of time, these are people. These are our relatives. These are our loved ones. They all have scans. They all have blood results. They all have stories. They all have investigations. They all have their own fears, dreams, hopes that you have to know, you have to understand as a doctor. If you're doing that in the same amount of time, the quality of care that I can provide plummets. So I'm handcuffed to the system and the conditions within which I am working. So those are examples of the suffocation of funds, resources, staffing. Let me give you some examples of what privatisation does, because it's often harder to explain what that means. One example, a hospital I worked in had elective in-house transport. So transport organised by the NHS to take NHS patients to and from their appointments. It then got sold to G4S, the incompetent company that totally messed up the Olympics. As soon as they took over the services, I noticed many more patients were late to appointments or even couldn't even make appointments. They would come into clinic with life-threatening terminal illnesses in tears because their elective ambulance driver hadn't arrived and they were so scared they wouldn't come to their appointments. I was faced with reams of forms that I had to fill in because G4S had decided they wanted to reduce the number of patients they would provide these services to. Privatisation is about cutting costs to maximise profits, and the cost is human. Another example of privatisation, I work in oncology. Increasingly, with the budget cuts, there is a move towards introducing top-up fees, co-payments, co-pays they're called in America. This is now a reality in the UK for the first time that I'm aware of. Ever-increasing developments in oncology mean there are ever-increasingly expensive drugs. The NHS now can't afford to provide them for everyone. So we now, as clinicians, are in the situation where we can be having a conversation with a young mother, 2 children, no job, and asking whether or not she can afford £120,000 for a 1 in 4 chance that she could live a few months extra. What kind of system have we allowed to be created? This is not the USA, this is happening now in the UK. But I don't want to be too, negative. There is a lot of anger out there. There's a lot of disillusionment amongst NHS staff, but there's also a hell of a lot of camaraderie. I saw that during the junior doctors' strike, because when you erode people's conditions, when you erode their morale, they will only take so much, as Gurj has said, and then there becomes a tipping point, and that crack happened 2 years ago now. You do not get 50,000 largely conservative, probably conservative voting, majority, defending their working terms and conditions, defending their patients, making the hardest decision that any of us had ever made to get out on the streets without there being a serious crisis. That politicised a lot of junior doctors. It made them aware of what is happening around them. And most importantly, it linked them up with people in the community. And that's the key. That's where the real strength lies. So 2 years ago, I came to a public meeting. 2 years ago, I was, I'd say, an armchair warrior. You know, watching Newsnight, throwing things at it, turning it off, talking about the bias. And I came to a meeting and I heard a panel quite similar to this. John Lister was in fact speaking at the time. And I thought, wow, that's spot on. I totally agree with that. And I want to do something about it. And I came up and I said, what can I do? I'm here, I'm ready. This is called Health Campaigns Together now. We are a group of volunteers doing this in our own free time, people who have got passion, who are motivated, who have initiative, who have imagination. And last year, we put on a demonstration where 250,000 people got out there into the streets. This year, it was 60,000 in 3 weeks. During the general election, we put on the National NHS Roadshow. We created a video that was viewed 13 million times. We are credited in a book written about the election as being one of the most influential campaigns. We were the 3rd most used Twitter account. These things have a real impact. One of the proudest things that I have ever read about what I've done is that I was a thorn in the side of Tory HQ during that journey. So I want to leave with a message of hope and of fight. When I struggle, which I often do, to cope with the things that I'm seeing around me, when I feel powerless, often, I think of three key things. Number one, what is it that I believe in, and can I justify what I believe in? Number two, is what I believe in the interests of the majority, for the good of the majority? And number three, how can I fight with as many other people to make that happen? And I think if you believe in something like the NHS, this is the absolute epitome of all of those things. It is for the greatest good. It is for the collective public interest. It came out of the devastation of the Second World War in times of real austerity. It can be achieved, and the only way to achieve it is to do what every single one of you are doing here tonight, is getting out, getting active, getting together, and then we'll get it back. Thank you.
So can we have a big hand for all four of our speakers, because I think they've all been brilliant. But the meeting's not over, because we've got about half an hour for you, because at the end of the day, every one of us makes a huge difference. And as we've heard, every one of us gives enormous support to Aisling and Gurj, who are fighting inside. Without the campaigns in the community, we're giving them, I hope, the courage. They give us the courage to fight, and I hope we give you the courage to stand firm and to fight and keep on doing that.